different organs and tissues: heart, liver, lungs, skin, brain, bone. Lots and lots of different kinds of tissues can be created from stem cells, and they can be put onto these tissue chips, and then you can model diseases and all sorts on a little chip like this.
Fascinating. We're looking at some video, I believe, of one of these tissue chips being put together. Kind of explain us through what we're seeing.
So what you're seeing there is one of our kidney chips that the Tissue Chips in Space program from the National Institutes of Health and the ISS National Lab has been funding. So this chip here is being seeded here. You're seeing that blue fluid coming through in those little triangles, those little squares, are cells that are being placed into the chip. And they're put in there with this pink stuff, this extracellular matrix that keeps them alive and keeps them bubbling away, happily chatting to each other over the course of a few weeks. And so what you're seeing there then with the blue fluid coming through is how we feed those cells during that time that they're up on the space station.
Got to keep them alive.
Exactly. They need all their nutrients, they need all their stuff that keeps them feeling good up there.
So what is the benefit of an experiment like this? What can we glean from this and hopefully in the future?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Daryl. So when astronauts go up to the space station, they have a lot of changes that they see in their bodies that look very similar to certain kinds of disease states or even aging down here on Earth. So when we put cells onto tissue chips and we send them to the space station, we're able to see the same kinds of changes that might happen to the astronauts, but on a very, very short time scale. So for example, diseases that might take months or years or even decades to actually be a clinical problem down here on Earth, can actually be modeled in space in just a couple of weeks. So we can really accelerate the disease modeling using these tissue chips and then see how different drugs and therapies act on them. So we're super excited that some of the Crew-1 folks might be doing some research for us. So thanks very much, guys.
Fascinating, and thank you very much, Dr. Lucy Lowe, for being with us here from the National Institutes of Health. That was a fascinating experiment, and we hope the astronauts get some good work on it so that you can further develop your research. Really
Wonderful. Thank you, Daryl.
All right, very good. And so now we'll toss it back to Hawthorne, California, and John I for the latest at T-minus 49 minutes and counting.
Thank you, Daryl. T-minus 49 minutes, 7 seconds, continuing the countdown. Right now, the launch director and launch team are preparing for the readiness for propellant load and launch pole. The SpaceX launch director has checked with the Dragon mission director and the NASA launch manager. They are ready to proceed. Currently, we're doing an electronic poll of the 7 members of the SpaceX launch team for their go to load propellant and then to press on with launch. Now, the Falcon launch crew is located in Firing Room 4 in the Launch Control Center, adjacent to the historic Vehicle Assembly Building on Kennedy Space Center. Key NASA launch members are also located in the firing room. Now, what we're waiting for right now is we expected about T-minus 47 minutes to hear the results of the poll. While we're waiting to hear that, a couple other status items. The crew is currently on board, and the crew access arm is about to be retracted. You can see the access arm currently in the pre-launch position alongside the Dragon capsule. We'll rotate that out of the way, then we'll arm the launch escape system on Dragon before we go into loading propellant on the Falcon 9. We're launching out of pad 39A, heading northeast out of the eastern range. The range continues to be go for launch. They're monitoring clearance area around the launch pad as well as the air and sea space around the flight corridor. Now, the good news on the weather front, we have been given a new probability of violation of only 20%, or as the optimist would say, 80% chance of good weather. There's a small chance of a shower, but it would have to pop up pretty much right over the pad here at the last minute. They're looking, ground winds are cooperating, upper altitude winds are cooperating. So the weather officer gave us some good news about 10 minutes ago as we got inside of T-minus 1 hour. Now we're coming up on T-minus 47 minutes. And the SpaceX team is finishing up their go-no-go polls. We're waiting for a few more people to give the electronic thumbs up so that then the SpaceX launch director can check that item off and then proceed into the remainder of the countdown, which will include propellant loading at T-minus 35 minutes. So let's listen in for a moment to the countdown net.
Dragon SpaceX for arm timeline.
And go ahead for the arm timeline.
Yeah, we were just talking here about the tablet and how much time you'll have to put it away. essentially, as soon as the T-minus 45-minute brief occurs, we're going to begin retracting the arm, and we'd like to be ready to arm the launch escape system immediately, as soon as that's complete.
And Dragon copies. We will go ahead and take care of that now.
Copy all. Thank you.
Heard a little bit of dialogue there between Core and the Dragon crew looking at a computer notebook that they're getting ready to put away, letting the crew know what the timeline would be once we finish the go-no-go poll and we give the instructions to the launch team at T-minus 45. Then we'll proceed into retract of the axis arm. You can see it's currently alongside of Dragon, and then we'll go into arming of the escape system, pardon me, years of previous experience. And then finally, we will get into propellant loading. Right now, they're getting just the last thumbs up. People have been looking at data that we were gathering just outside of T-minus 1 hour as we were doing final checkouts of the Falcon 9 on the propulsion and engine systems before we got into propellant load.
Poll is complete and the team is ready for crew access arm retract, propellant loading, and launch. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD and they will approve aborting the launch auto sequence and proceed into launch abort. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operator shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. Operators advise launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. In the event of a fire alarm at firing 4 today, key operators noted below will remain at their post while the alarm is evaluated. In the event that personnel safety is threatened, evacuate to the south-facing emergency exit, which leads directly south. Launch control, you may proceed with arming the crew arm for movement.
Copy, arming crew arm.
And there you've heard it. Just inside 44 minutes, the SpaceX launch director has announced polls are complete. We're go to head into propellant load. The Dragon team is going to begin retract of the crew access arm. So, Kate, with that, everything continuing to look good. We're right on time in the countdown.
Thanks for that, John I.
And it looks like the crew access arm has already begun to retract away. Just a beautiful sight.
So this is one of the last major visual milestones that we have before launch. So the crew access arm now moving away, and we are T-minus 43 minutes and 15 seconds from launch. We're standing by as we wait for completion of the crew access retract. Shortly thereafter, we should hear the call out that the launch escape system is armed. And after that, we will hear that F9 prop loading has begun.
And now, earlier this evening, we saw NASA astronauts Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, Shannon Walker, and JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi suit up. That was about 3 hours ago. They made the drive out to Launch Complex 39A. Ingressed Crew Dragon about 2 hours ago, and the spacecraft hatch was closed a second time after and then they had a successful leak check. And again, we've just seen the crew access arm retract, and what we heard a few moments ago was that once this process is complete, they are going to go ahead and arm the launch escape system immediately. So we're going to wait to hear the call out that the crew access arm retraction is complete, and then we'll explain a little bit more about this launch escape system, what it is, why it's armed at this point, and why it's so significant. So again, we're at T-minus 41 minutes, 23 seconds and counting We've just watched the crew access arm retract. That is the suspended walkway that attaches the rotating service structure to
Fixed service structure.
the fixed service structure, excuse me, I'm talking shuttle speak, to the Crew Dragon capsule. So we watched the arm retract away. So now we see Crew Dragon.
Crew arm stow is complete.
And we heard confirmation that crew arm movement
Dragon,
is complete.
SpaceX, with that call, you are go for Section 7, close visors and arm launch escape system.
Okay, Dragon copies, moving to Section 7.
So their confirmation from Core telling crew that they are allowed to move on. You hear us mention move on to Section 6, Section 7. That's simply making sure that everyone's on the same page in terms of which procedure we are now working toward. So that was just the Core, who is the person that is essentially the single voice communicating to the crew inside.
Dragon, visors are closed. We are arming the launch escape system.
Copy.
And there we heard Commander
Mike Hopkins.
Thank you. Commander Mike Hopkins informed that they are now closing their visors and now commanding the launch escape system to be armed. Now the launch escape system is basically the crew's path to safety in the event of an anomaly, quite simply. If we were to have an abort scenario here on the pad, we have demonstrated the efficiency and success of that system, having done a pad abort test. Previously, we did a launch escape system test mid-flight earlier, I believe it was January of this year. Essentially, this is the system that all the way from now on the pad until they are in orbit, the crew would be able to escape safely in the event of an anomaly. That's why it is so important that we check the weather all around the world, really. It's not just the weather here at the Cape that we're looking at in order to determine if we're go or no go. It is the weather along that entire escape corridor.
Right. And as Kate was mentioning, again, the launch escape system is armed. That has to happen before the SpaceX teams will proceed with fueling Falcon 9. And so that propellant loading process is set to begin at T-minus 35 minutes, so just a few minutes from now. And what that looks like, Kate, you talked about the tests that were done. You did a pad abort test back in 2015. You did an in-flight abort test at the beginning of this year. And so what that looks like in action, if it were to happen, a pad abort test, or excuse me, a pad abort would be before liftoff at any point from propellant loading, which begins in just under 3 minutes now, until the moment of liftoff. If something were to go wrong and the crew were in danger, Crew Dragon can kind of act as a rocket on top of a rocket and propel itself off of Falcon 9 using its 8 built-in Super Draco thrusters, right? And so the idea is that if that happens, Crew Dragon would splash down off the coast, and then we would have a rescue scenario.
Correct.
And so we've rehearsed that ahead of time. We coordinate very closely, the NASA and SpaceX teams, with the Department of Defense Detachment 3 to prepare for a scenario such as that. We're also prepared for if there were to be a need for a launch escape after the point of liftoff. At any point from liftoff until they reach orbit, about roughly 12 minutes after liftoff. At any point in that sequence, Crew Dragon could still launch itself off of the Falcon 9 rocket. And in that scenario, Crew Dragon would splash down at some other location further downrange, farther away from Florida, obviously. And that's why the weather downrange is just as important as the weather around the pad for liftoff, because they're thinking about how are we going to rescue the crew if we get into a scenario like that.
Exactly. So it's really complicated, but it is a system that we have spent a lot of time designing and testing, and it's definitely something to consider in terms of that weather criteria that we do look at.
And so now at T-minus 36 minutes and 20 seconds, in just over a minute, we should be hearing that Falcon 9 is ready for propellant loading. That'll be with the RP-1, which is rocket-grade kerosene, and then also simultaneously the liquid oxygen loading will begin.
Once we begin loading that liquid oxygen, we'll see plumes of what will appear to be white smoke. It's actually the liquid oxygen vaporizing, turning from liquid form into gas form around the rocket itself in the rather humid Florida air.
And Nicole, I know, we're just about 30 seconds from fueling, but from your perspective, obviously this launch escape capability is not something that the space shuttle had. So from an astronaut's perspective, what's your take on having the ability to abort from the pad or in flight?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. It's what we need to be doing with our spacecraft. And I think anytime you can better ensure the survival of your crew in any situation during, launch and on the way to space, that's what we need to be doing.
Launch autosequence has started. Propellant load has started.
We just heard that call that propellant load has started. That means fueling of Falcon 9 has begun. Okay, so we are now at T-minus 34 minutes, 34 seconds and counting. Fueling of Falcon 9 is underway. The launch escape system is armed. And again, today is the first in a series of 6-month missions for NASA's Commercial Crew program. And the Dragon capsule was loaded with propellants about a week and a half ago, just a few miles down the road from us.
Yeah, that's an area that we affectionately refer to as Dragonland.
Yeah. Yep. And in order to fly, Dragon needs fuel and an oxidizer. So for the fuel we use, Kate, you're going to have to help me with these words.
No
I can't
problem.
pronounce them.
Yeah, so it's monomethylhydrazine, or MMH, and nitrogen tetroxide, or tetroxide, for also known as NTO, for the oxidizer. These are two propellants, a fuel and an oxidizer, that when they come into contact, they combust instantaneously. So it's a great propellant to use in spaceflight because you don't need an ignition source. So we use those propellants to maneuver Dragon on orbit, and those propellants power the Draco engines, as well as the 8 Super Draco engines that would be utilized in the launch escape system in an abort scenario.
And again, we want to be crystal clear. Now that fueling for Falcon 9 has started, that means that the 8 Super Draco engines built into Crew Dragon are ready, if needed, to launch the capsule away from the Falcon 9 rocket in an instant if there is any kind of emergency associated with the rocket or on the pad. Now let's go over to SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne for an operations update. John?
Well, we are counting down those final minutes, and everything is still looking good for Falcon 9 and Dragon for an on-time launch just under 33 minutes from now. As you heard, Falcon 9 began propellant loading right on time at T-minus 35 minutes. Now, the propellants that feed the Merlin engines that power Falcon 9 are 2 liquids. One liquid is the fuel, the other is an oxidizer. And that fuel is a refined form of kerosene, also referred to as RP-1. Now, our oxidizer is densified liquid oxygen, also called LOX. Densified means it is kept much colder than typical for launch vehicles, and it takes up less volume. This allows for more oxidizer to be loaded into the first and second stages. Now, to ignite the fuel and oxidizer in the Merlin rocket engine, we use an ignition fluid called TTEB. When TTEB comes in contact with oxygen, it ignites, and it gives off a green-colored flame. Once we've got the flame going, we can then add the kerosene fuel into the chamber, and the engine goes to main power. And you might see the green flash just as the second stage engine ignites, following stage separation 2 minutes, 48 seconds into tonight's flight. Now, currently, we're early into propellant loading. The first stage fuel tank is about 10% full, and that first stage is the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle. You can see on your screen, you've got the black carbon fiber landing legs, then the white propellant tanks of the first stage, topped off by that black cylinder, the inner stage. Now, liquid oxygen loading is also underway on the first stage. That loading will begin on the second stage, which you can see on your monitor, which is the cylinder, the white cylinder just above that black interstage. Liquid oxygen loading on stage 2 begins at T-minus 16.5 minutes. And we'll continue loading liquid oxygen on both stages until the last few minutes of the countdown. Helium loading into pressure vessels is also underway. We use that to pressurize the tanks in flight as the propellant is pulled out by the Merlin turbopumps. Now on board the Dragon spacecraft, the astronauts are monitoring systems while propellant is loaded
Helium load.
into the Falcon 9. And the call out you just heard, ground loading and the crew know that helium loading is going on the vehicle right now. So as I mentioned, the astronauts are listening to this right now. As part of their training in the simulator, we also can give them the playback of sounds that we've recorded in Dragon capsule during recent flights. Plus, they also had a discussion with Bob and Doug after their flight, who related what their flight experience was like earlier this year. Now out on the Eastern Range, we continue to hear they're green, ready to go. There are no problems, and they are go for launch. And finally, the weather, as I mentioned a little while ago, it's actually improved during the day. We're down to 20% probability of violation. The biggest thing we're watching is just in case in these last half hour, if a rain shower might spring up within a mile or two of the launch pad. But currently, the rain looks like it's holding off. The upper altitude winds are good, and the ground winds are very light. Now, as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch time. So at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we'll have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity just under 3 days from now. But let's turn it over to Jesse and Leah for an overview of events after liftoff.
Thanks, John. For Crew-1, the astronauts' flight to station will take about 27.5 hours, and their journey is much longer but fairly similar to the trip NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken made earlier this year in Crew Dragon's first mission with humans aboard.
As we await T0 in just about 29 minutes, the ground operations teams are doing a series of systems checks to make sure both Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready for launch. You're looking at a live view of our teams at the Cape as they prepare for liftoff. Now, as we wait for the launch clock to hit 0, we wanted to give you an overview of what the ascent portion of the mission will look like.
Once we hit T0 and a successful launch occurs, we will watch Falcon 9 and Dragon lift off from historic launch pad 39A and make their ascent.
At about 50 seconds into flight, Falcon's 9 engines will throttle down to help pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure on the rocket, or what we typically refer to as max Q. It's worth noting that once we hit max Q, the vehicle will be going supersonic.
Once we are through the period of maximum dynamic pressure, we can throttle up our Merlin engines again. And from there, at about 2.5 minutes into flight, we have a series of 3 events that will happen in rapid succession.
First is MECO, or main engine cutoff. This is where all 9 Merlin N1D engines shut off in preparation for stage separation, which is our second event. This is where the first stage detaches from the second stage, with the first stage making its way back to Earth for landing as the second stage continues on its journey with the third event. SES, or second stage engine start 1, is where the MVAC engine lights up and propels the second stage along with our Crew-1 astronauts to orbit.
As Stage 2 heads towards its targeted drop-off orbit, Stage 1 will execute 2 burns in order to make its way back to Earth. The first is the entry burn, where 3 of the M1D engines will reignite and then shut down. This helps to slow the stage down in preparation for entry back into the Earth's atmosphere.
While the first stage is heading back to Earth, the second stage will cut off its 1 Merlin engine that was ignited right after stage separation. Once this happens, we will wait for confirmation of a good orbital insertion.
And about 90 seconds after Dragon gets into orbit, Falcon 9 will land back on Earth. The landing burn, which is a single engine burn, will bring the vehicle speed down rapidly in order to land on the drone ship about 9.5 minutes into the mission.
While Falcon 9 first stage is landing, Dragon is preparing to separate from the second stage. At about 3 minutes after the second stage gets into orbit, we should have a great view of Dragon with its 4-person crew drifting away from the second stage. Once Dragon is a short distance away, it will begin checking out its Draco maneuvering thrusters to make sure Dragon continues to increase separation distance from the second stage. It's worth noting that these are not the Super Draco engines that would be used during an abort scenario.
And about 40 seconds after separation, Dragon's nose cone deploy sequence will begin. It will take roughly 4 minutes for the nose cone hooks to unlatch and open, exposing its guidance navigation controls, or GNC, that will help Dragon autonomously fly to the space station.
And lastly, once the nose cone is deployed, the remaining Draco thrusters on the forward bulkhead will be checked. From there, over the next 27.5 hours, Dragon will begin its approach phase, undergoing a number of phasing burns as it makes its way to station. All of that will be coming up soon.
Stage 2 cryo-helium load.
And confirmation, stage 2 cryo-helium being loaded now. But for now, let's check back in with Marie at Kennedy Space Center. Marie?
All right, thank you, Leah. If you're just joining us, we are now at T-minus 25 minutes, 5 seconds and counting from the second astronaut launch from U.S. soil this year, and the first with 4 astronauts aboard Crew Dragon. We want to go over to NASA's Garvey McIntosh. She is standing by in Japan to speak live with the president of JAXA. Garvey, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Marie. Hello, I'm here in Tokyo, Japan. This is Garvey McIntosh, and I'm going to interview JAXA President, Dr. Hiroshi Yamakawa. Dr. Yamakawa, konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa.
Could you tell us about the partnership between JAXA and NASA?
Oh, thank you very much for your question. The U.S. and Japan have built a close relationship in the aerospace field for more than 50 years. And NASA and JAXA have been collaborating in many fields, including earth science, space exploration, human space activities, and aeronautics. Astronauts Noguchi participates in the Crew-1 mission as the first foreign astronaut on board a U.S. commercial spacecraft. This shows a trust relationship between the two countries. We recognize that this mission is an important milestone toward future international space exploration, and we will firmly support him from the ground.
Thank you very much. Could you tell us a little bit more about today's mission and what the mission represents for Noguchi-san?
Well, as the first Japanese astronaut on board 3 different spacecraft, Space Shuttle, Soyuz, and Crew Dragon, I'm sure he will play an outstanding role based on past experiences. Experiments on the ISS are expected to contribute to the advancement of people's lives on Earth. Protein crystal growth experiments in microgravity environment may lead to the development of new medicine. Japanese private companies are also getting to use the experiment module Kibo for the initiatives. We expect that we will the utilization of Kibo. Thank you.
Thank you. And last question, looking a little bit towards the future, I know recently Japan, along with 7 other countries, including the United States, recently signed the Artemis Accords. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Artemis Accords and what that means for future space exploration?
Well, last month in October, the Japanese government signed the Artemis Accords, representing the strong partnership as one of the first countries to join in the future international space exploration. Well, I think Japan has expertise in human and robotic space technologies accumulated through our experiences, TV, and Hayabusa 2. And we will continue to move forward with technical considerations with NASA and other international partners. In addition to the field of human spaceflight, we will continue and deepen our cooperation with NASA and our international partners in order to explore the new era of space and contribution to our society on Earth. Thank you very much.
Well, than thank you very much. arigatou gozaimashita. Thank you for your time this morning, and I'll
Arigato
pass it
gozaimasu.
back
Thank
to
you
you,
very much.
Tahira. Thank you. Back.
All right, so we just took a look at numbers across all of our social channels, and there are over 500,000 people tuning into this broadcast right now. And the hashtag LaunchAmerica is trending at number 20 on Twitter, last time we checked. And Marie, Kate, Nicole, I've got some great photos rolling in, and I have a few that I just have to share right now. So take a look at this first one. We've got this little explorer asking if there's room for one more on the mission.
Aww. I love it.
I know. Let's go to the next one. We've seen so many cute space pups today, and this corgi and its little NASA onesie is just the icing on the cake.
Yes. I can't get enough space dogs, so.
Okay, let's go next. How incredible is this little patriotic astronaut holding the flag? Now, y'all, this one definitely made me pretty emotional the first time I saw.
Yeah.
Okay, last one. Check out how awesome Kiana looks in her blue flight suit, and, I mean, wishing her hero, Victor Glover, well on his Launch America mission. So you've seen it there, and for those of you at home, thank you for sharing a piece of what this mission means to you with us. And in these final moments, let's check in with Shaniqua at Mission Control in Houston. Shaniqua, what's the latest?
Thanks, Tahira. The space station team here in Houston is focused, and critical systems on the station continue to function normally. The teams have verified the command path from the ground up through the constellation of communication satellites to the station. Everything is nominal, and the station will be ready to receive Dragon tomorrow. NASA Flight Director Anthony Varia has been leading the operations planning between the joint NASA and SpaceX teams for the Crew-1 mission, and with the mission about to begin, he passed along this to the teams. No matter the spacecraft, our jobs remain the same. We will protect the crew, we will protect the vehicle, and we will perform our mission. We remain tough and competent. We operate with resilience. Anthony and team are on console here in Mission Control for launch and will be back tomorrow for docking. A reminder that a launch today will take about 27.5 hours to get to station, docking Monday to the Node 2 forward port scheduled at 10 p.m. Central Time, 4 a.m. GMT. Once Dragon is fully docked to the station, the team here in Houston will assist the Dragon and space station astronauts with leak checks as they work to open hatches on both Dragon and inside the station's pressurized mating adapter. We expect hatch open to take approximately 2 hours after docking. That's it for us here in Mission Control Houston. I'll send it back over to the team in Florida. Marie?
All right, thank you so much, Shaniqua. We are inside of T-minus 19 minutes until launch. So exciting. We started the day with 50% probability of launch, and now we're up to 80% chance of the weather cooperating. So we are so excited. I know we're going to be turning our attention solely to the pad and going over to Hawthorne to take us through the final count. But one thing that really stuck out to me earlier, and I wanted to mention, when Shannon was talking about her path to becoming an astronaut, she talked about how she was 4 years old when she decided that that's what I want to do. And it really stuck out to me because my 4-year-old daughter is watching and she's dreaming about becoming an astronaut. And it's so special for, I think, especially for little girls, maybe I'm biased, but to be able to have a role model like Shannon and like you, Nicole, because at the time when Shannon was 4 years old, women weren't astronauts. And what an amazing time to be in when little girls have women to look up to, and African-American children have Victor Glover to look up to and see that, they're represented and they can do this too.
Yeah, and I think NASA and the world of space exploration, from the human spaceflight side for sure, has been, over the years just so progressive in understanding how this diversity is so important. And I love thinking about your 4-year-old daughter watching launch tonight and being excited about this. And I'm thankful to be here tonight with you two ladies kind of representing.
I'm super excited. I have seen SpaceX launches before. I've seen shuttle launches before, but I've never been this close to the launch pad. And I'm just my palms are sweaty with excitement, and it's going to be incredible. You know, night launches here, they just light up the sky, and so I'm super excited, and I can't even imagine. You know, I think a lot about Victor Glover this evening because, as we said before, this is his first time going to space. He has thousands of hours as a test pilot, like a super impressive resume, and this is his first time going to space, and I'm so excited for him to be part of this mission and get to go to the ISS after a long wait.
Yeah, and that is a beautiful destination. Let me just tell you that they, you know, the four of them are going to, you know, do amazing work there. And it's been mentioned a couple times before, you know, this partnership that we have that's allowing us to do such incredible things that are just ultimately about improving life on Earth. It's very
Absolutely.
Cool.
And Nicole, I think it's worth mentioning, we didn't talk about this earlier, and I know you are a very humble person and you're focused on the crew that's on the pad right now, but you are the last resident International Space Station crew member to launch from and then land back on U.S. soil. So I think that's significant.
Yeah, as a shuttle crew member, and it's kind of, you know, weird to think that that was that long ago, but, you know, I don't think any crew members goes into it thinking about what, you know, what first or last it is, but I'll tell you, having worked at Kennedy Space Center for 10 years as a NASA engineer and to be able to, you know, support a mission like that and be here watching this tonight, really historic event, this is the place where we learn, you know, that there is a solution to every challenging problem. And in the words of a person I mentioned earlier, Mr. Honeycutt, you know, here's how we can, not why we can't. And that's what we saw go on tonight as well.
Absolutely. And with T-minus 15 minutes, 10 seconds and counting to liftoff, we want to focus in on the pad as we proceed through the final stretch of the countdown. We will turn it over to Hawthorne to take us through launch at 7:27 this evening, Eastern Time. John?
Thanks, Marie. As Marie mentioned, everything is looking good for launch of Falcon 9 and Dragon. It's going to come at 27 minutes and 17 seconds after the hour, just a little under 15 minutes from now. We began propellant loading on Falcon 9 on time at T-minus 35 minutes. You may have heard earlier the call out, the fuel is completely loaded on the second stage, so the RP-1 kerosene fuel is complete. We also got the start right on time 2 minutes ago of liquid oxygen loading onto the second stage. Now on the first stage that you can see with the white plumes coming off of it, fuel loading is continuing. We're about half complete with fuel load. That'll finish in 8 minutes at T-minus 6. Now densified oxygen, the liquid oxygen, continues to load on the first stage. That'll come down and finish about T-minus 3 minutes. And then, as I mentioned, the second stage has just begun liquid oxygen loading just 2.5 minutes ago. That will continue all the way down to T-minus 2 minutes. Now, currently, eastern range is go. Everything continues to look good. And the weather, as we said, has continued to cooperate. You can talk about it. You can't do much about it. But tonight, it looks like all conditions are good on the weather. And finally, Dragon. The Dragon mission director and team, they are reporting no issues. They've completed the communication checkouts earlier in the countdown. You can see the crew access arm is retracted away. What you have left now is just the strong back alongside of Dragon you can see on your monitors. We have armed the launch escape system. The crew is strapped in and they are ready to go. Their next major event's coming up at T-minus 10 minutes. They're going to get final instructions relayed to them. The crew displays will be configured for launch, and that allows the crew to get insight into how launch is proceeding and provides constant updates on vehicle health to the crew that you can see on the right-hand side of the monitor. The crew will also at that time close their visors in preparation for launch. Now at T-minus 5 minutes, we'll be in terminal count, and Dragon will transition to its internal battery power. We'll hear continued call-outs on the countdown net as we get close to 0 and to liftoff. But right now, 12.5 minutes to go, everything looking good. Leah and I will be commenting, but we're going to let you listen into a lot of the discussion and just enjoy the last 12 minutes of the countdown as we head for liftoff again, 27 minutes, 17 seconds after the hour.
That's right, John. It's so exciting. Only 12 minutes, 13 seconds until liftoff now. And just some things that you can look for, especially upon ascent. You'll be hearing some performance calls as we get into the final countdown and then after liftoff. These are SpaceX flight controllers. They're reporting the trajectory, the speed, the booster performance, and some of the key milestones for Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon on the way uphill. It's about a 9-minute ride to orbit, and a few minutes after that is when we'll see Crew Dragon separate from the second stage and begin flying free on its own. Some of those other calls you'll hear upon liftoff are number and letter combinations. These mark different abort zones throughout the flight. The first two are 1A and 1B. This signifies they're in the first stage, and that will last until they're up to the very north of North Carolina. The next are 2A through 2E or 2 Echo. Those will come into play once the second stage kicks in. That lasts from the top of North Carolina all the way to the tip of Newfoundland in the northern Atlantic. There's also a spot we want to avoid in the northern Atlantic, and so you might hear the call Shannon or forward to Shannon. Of course, that's not to be confused with our crew member Shannon Walker today, but that actually refers to Shannon, Ireland. It means they would target off the coast of Ireland if they were later in that second stage and needed to abort. But that next call out we're listening for to the crew should come up at T-minus 10 minutes that the crew displays. Those 3 panels in front of our astronauts will be configured for launch. Now just 10 minutes and 35 seconds to go until liftoff. Also, as John and I mentioned, that stage 2 fuel load is complete. Stage 1 is at about 90%. Liquid oxygen load on the second stage is about 40%, and on the first stage about 85%.
Dragon, SpaceX, confirm crew displays are configured for launch.
And SpaceX, this is Dragon. Displays are configured for launch.
Copy, Resilience. We're honored to have you as our crew as we begin operational missions to the ISS. Have an amazing trip and know that we are all for one.
Thanks, Jay. And to all the people at NASA and SpaceX, by working together through these difficult times, you've inspired the nation, the world, and in no small part, the name of this incredible vehicle, Resilience. And now it's time for us to do our part, Crew-1 for all.
Copy all. Thanks, Hopper.
That was the voice of Commander Mike Hopkins confirming those crew displays are configured, and that T-minus 10 minutes was another check for the Falcon 9 launch commit criteria. It was checked by some computers. It was the last check of a wide variety of the Falcon system data to make sure we are go. From here on, we continue to count down until T-minus 7 minutes when the pre-valves open.
T-minus 8 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. As Liam mentioned, the next major event at T-minus 7 minutes, we will open the pre-valves. Currently, the Merlin engines on the first stage are isolated by valves that are between the propellant tanks and with the Merlin engines. We'll open the pre-valves. That'll allow us to begin passing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the inlet of the turbo pumps. That'll chill them down to get them ready for when we bring the pumps up to full speed at T-minus 2 seconds. We want to make sure that the pumps are chilled so that there's not any opportunity for the liquid oxygen to possibly get in contact with a warm pump and turn into gas, something you want to avoid on a turbo pump.
7 minutes and 40 seconds now to liftoff. We're still watching those fuel levels tick up, and in the first stage, we're almost at 100% of that densified kerosene. As we mentioned, second stage is full. First stage fueling should be complete for that RP1 at about T-minus 6 minutes.
Standing by for pre-valve opening.
Stage 1 engine chill has started.
And there's the call out. Stage 1 engine chill has started. Indicates that we are opening the pre-valves. Liquid oxygen now beginning to flow slowly through the turbo pumps on the Merlin 1D first stage engines.
Next call out should be in about 30 seconds from now. We'll be looking for stage 1 RP load complete. That's the densified kerosene, that fuel on the first stage, already full on the second stage, and we'll still be loading liquid oxygen up until about 2 minutes prior to liftoff on the second stage. Standing by for that fuel call.
Stage 1 fuel load is complete.
Okay, right on time, and a great view of Dragon sitting on top of the Falcon 9 as we're continuing to load liquid oxygen onto both the first and second stages. The RP1 kerosene fuel is now completely loaded on both stage 1 and stage 2. All continues to go well, just under 6 minutes to launch.
In about 30 seconds, we'll enter terminal count. Dragon's onboard computers will take control of the vehicle. Both fuel on first and second stage is complete, and liquid oxygen loading continues with the second stage at about 80%, first stage at 95%. Something else you might notice is water rushing the pad shortly before liftoff. That's to suppress the sound and keep any sound from imparting a load on Crew Dragon as it prepares to lift off.
Dragon is in configure for terminal count. Dragon is on internal power. Falcon 9 propellant tanks are pressurizing for strongback retract.
Good confirmation that Dragon is on internal power, and now we'll be looking for a major milestone before we launch today. That'll be the strongback retract. John, you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Leah, if we get a close-up of the Dragon at second stage.
Strongback is retracting.
We've heard the call out, strongback retracting. That's a two-step sequence. First, there are clamp arms around the very top of the second stage. You can see one of them just above the gaseous oxygen vapors coming out of the second stage. Those arms will open up, and then just inside of T-minus 4 minutes, once the arms are released, we'll begin to retract the strongback alongside the vehicle. It'll move back 2 degrees in position, and by about T-minus 3.5 minutes, we ought to be finished with that. The strongback will retract to 45 degrees away from the rocket once we hit T0 as part of the liftoff sequence.
And at T-minus 3 minutes,
Right now, we're waiting for the retract. And there you can see the strongback is beginning to move away from the vehicle. And it looks like we are just about into the required pre-launch position, just a couple degrees away from the Falcon 9 and the Dragon capsule. But right now, T-minus 3 minutes, 8 seconds, everything continues to be go on Dragon and Falcon 9.
Currently standing.
Dragon is in terminal count.
And Dragon is in terminal count, and we are standing by to hear that stage 1 liquid oxygen loading is complete. Stage
1 LOX load is complete.
And there we have it, and stage 2 should finish shortly after at about 2 minutes prior to liftoff.
So now the last major event is finished liquid oxygen loading on stage 2. It wraps up at about T-minus 2 minutes. Then at about T-minus a minute and a half, we have to drain back and vent down the liquid line that goes up the strongback alongside the Falcon 9. If you see a large white cloud about midway down around the rocket, that's normal. That's, again, just the gaseous oxygen hitting the warm, moist Florida air.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete. Dragon is in auto idle.
And good calls that Stage 2 liquid oxygen load is complete. That means we have full fuel on the first and second stages, that densified kerosene, and we're full of the oxidizer. Liquid oxygen on the first and second stage as well. Now just a minute and 20 seconds until liftoff today. And as you can hear those sounds, like Soichi Noguchi said, the vehicle is alive. Coming up in 10 seconds, we'll look to hear that Dragon is in countdown and Falcon 9 is in startup.
Dragon is in countdown. FTS is armed. Falcon 9 is in startup and is now controlling.
50 seconds now until liftoff. That FTS you heard is flight termination.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
SpaceX, this is Resilient. Roger, go.
Go for launch, and at 37 seconds, the International Space Station flying over Kennedy Space Center.
Crew-1 for all.
Crew Dragon poised to go catch it. 20 seconds till liftoff.
T-minus 15 seconds. Falcon 9 is configured for flight. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
And resilience rises. Not even gravity contains humanity when we explore as one for all.
M1E propulsion is nominal.
That's the word we want to hear. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Seconds into this historic mission, flying crew on board Dragon and Falcon 9. Stage 1 is preparing to throttle down. This is in preparation for max Q, which is maximum aerodynamic pressure.
Stage 1, throttle down.
There's that call out for throttle down.
Power and telemetry continue to be nominal for the vehicle, now traveling at 262 meters per second.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
There's that call out. The Falcon 9 is supersonic, and we will be passing through max Q here shortly, the largest structural load during ascent.
Max Q.
There's that call out. That Falcon has passed through max Q.
1 Bravo.
And we've just entered Stage 1 Bravo abort mode. That's going to take them through the end of the first stage burning just before second stage activates off the coast of North Carolina. T plus 1 minute and 40 seconds into flight. Dragon and Falcon 9 traveling 709 meters per second. That call that MVAC chill is underway, the Merlin vacuum engine.
Now with the call out of MVAC de-chilling, similar to what we saw in the first stage Merlin engines, the second stage engine being prepared for its ignition coming up in just over 30 seconds from now. We're a half a minute away from 3 quick events in rapid succession. We're going to get main engine cutoff. The 9 Merlin engines will throttle down and then shut down. We're going to get stage separation.
Stage 1, throttle down.
And then ignition of the second stage engine. We've begun the throttle down in preparation for stage separation.
And we have
2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed.
And you see that stage separation has confirmed. There goes that MVAC engine. Stage 2. Crew-1 is now on their way to the International Space Station. On the right side of your screen, you see stage 2 continuing to burn. Over on the left-hand side is stage 1 preparing for its return to Earth.
Currently on the left side, you can't make out much. It's a couple hours after sunset in Florida, but the grid fins have deployed on the first stage. The first stage is now unpowered, but with the velocity it had, it continues to coast up to an apogee before it begins to descend back into Earth's atmosphere. Now, as we watch, maybe we'll see the lights of Florida or the eastern seaboard in the background, but otherwise there's not going to be much to see. On the right-hand side,
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
You can hear the call out. Trajectory is nominal.
Nominal trajectory.
And we've heard the call out Bermuda. That means Bermuda ground station has the signals from the second stage of the Dragon and Falcon 9.
We're still continuing as stage 2 burns to listen for those abort zones. We are now in 2A through 2E to Echo, taking us up over the northern Atlantic.
Right now you can see the second stage engine glowing with the standard red that we have come to see over all these missions. Indicates everything's looking good. Power on the MVAC-D engine continues to run at 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of outer space.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
And trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
And we hear the reply from the crew acknowledging we have a nominal trajectory. Dragon made it to the Falcon 9 second stage, heading into the low Earth orbit, where Dragon will then separate and begin its trip the rest of the way to the space station.
We'll be looking for SECO, second stage engine cutoff, coming up at 8 minutes and 48 seconds after launch today, so about 3.5 minutes from now. Dragon and Falcon 9, second stage, currently flying 2,979 meters per second.
Now, currently, the first stage has begun its descent. It is through apogee. It's beginning to come back down, where it... coming up in another couple of minutes, we will have the entry burn, where we begin to slow down the first stage.
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Another call out, another nominal trajectory, just what we love to hear.
That voice you're hearing on board Dragon, that's Commander Mike Hopkins, speaking for our 4-person crew as they continue their journey, now 6 minutes and 12 seconds after liftoff. Trajectory still nominal.
And Leah, you can see on the indicator altitude, 201 kilometers. We're now beginning to essentially level out and pick up velocity to get us into low Earth orbit. We're a little under 1 minute from the ignition for the entry burn on first stage.
And we're about 2 minutes away.
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Great news, now 7 minutes after launch. Second stage engine continues to burn, everything looking good. And we'll see that continue to burn for another 1 minute and about 38 seconds.
Right now on stage 2, the crew's getting about a little more than 2.5 G's of acceleration. First stage preparing to ignite for the entry burn.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
And we've got ignition of the entry burn, center engine, followed by the other 2 restart engines. First stage now getting ready to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. This is about a 29-second burn, and it's designed to slow the vehicle way down. We're going to shed about 70% of the velocity of that dropping first stage by the time this landing burn completes. I should say by the time the entry burn completes, which is now over. First stage on target for the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. Meanwhile, we're watching second stage getting close to getting into orbit.
That's right. We've got about 30 seconds
Stage 2 internal
more.
guidance.
And now just about 20 seconds more of stage 2 continuing to burn until we see second stage engine cutoff, or SECO. We'll coast for a few minutes afterward to allow the rates and motion to...
Roger, Shannon.
There's that call for Shannon. That's Shannon, Ireland, an abort zone, but it looks like we continue smoothly to orbit today.
Invac shutdown.
And we've got shutdown of the second stage engine on time.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
Launch escape system is disarmed.
And SpaceX copies.
And Leah, the words we like to hear, a nominal orbit insertion.
That's right, John. Nominal orbit insertion, as we mentioned, stage 2. Oh, looks like some action on stage 1. And I believe we've had a touchdown on the drone ship.
We've got stage 1 has touched down on the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. But now the more important news, second stage is in orbit, right where we want, right on time. And we're getting ready for our next major activity, which will be Dragon spacecraft separation. Now, currently on the second stage, we are essentially venting pressure, purging the engine out, making sure everything is quiet in preparation.
Take a look. That's inside Crew Dragon right now. Our Crew-1 crew now coasting in low Earth orbit, still attached to that second stage. In just a couple of minutes, we should see that second stage separate, and Crew Dragon will be flying free.
Leah, the mission timer shows 90 seconds to Dragon separation.
Currently, Dragon is flying at 27,000 kilometers an hour. And we're T plus 11 minutes since liftoff today, waiting on that second stage separation. But as you can see, our astronauts from left to right, Shannon Walker, Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, and Soichi Noguchi, now on their way to the International Space Station. First trip to space for Victor Glover.
Acquisition of signal, Newfoundland.
And that call out, acquisition of signal in Newfoundland. That means the Newfoundland ground station is now receiving telemetry from Dragon. This view inside Mission Control Hawthorne. Teams continuing to monitor the vehicle, now traveling at almost 27,000 kilometers an hour.
Ten seconds to Dragon separation.
And separation confirmed. You can see that second stage departing. Crew Dragon leaving it behind.
Separation confirmed.
Now 12 minutes, 25 seconds into today's flight. Our next thing we'll be looking for is nose cone deploy. Our hooks will start to open on the nose cone and reveal those forward thrusters underneath. 13 minutes into today's mission, the view on the right-hand side of your screen coming from Crew Dragon. We had that short look at the second stage as it departed. That second stage will burn up upon re-entry into Earth's atmosphere.
Dragon SpaceX, we see nominal service section Draco checkouts and the humidifier activation.
And SpaceX, this is Dragon. We copy all, and we see the same.
Confirmation from teams on the ground and the crew. You can see them monitoring those 3 display panels, monitoring their journey to the International Space Station and where they are in the world right now, or over the world, I should say.
Well, we're in 14 minutes, 25 seconds since it was a great liftoff. Everything happened. We had a nominal insertion into low Earth orbit. You saw Dragon separate. We got the Draco checkouts were good. And right now we're hearing the nose cone hooks are opening up. Everything is happening right per the procedure. And we've got Crew-1 successfully on orbit. So with that, let's head over to our counterparts at Kennedy Space Center. Marie, how was that launch for you all there on the ground?
Oh my gosh, John, it just took our breath away. I mean, we could just turn right around in our seats and watch. We got up away from the desk to get a better look, and then we actually could see the booster coming back down.
Yeah, that was outstanding, and I don't even know what to say. High five. We're like high-fiving through the shield here.
High five. My husband texted me a picture of my daughter watching liftoff. It was just, I'm emotional. Seeing that, and went on the first attempt. How often does that happen in human space flight?
As it should.
I'm very happy. It has been a long day, but just to be able to stand there and actually feel the rocket pounding the air around you was just. It was just incredible. And then looking at the light too long, I couldn't see the MVAC ignition. So I still have spots in my eyes.
And then the views inside the capsule too, with the 4 of them, looking kind of mellow, but you can see Victor's kind of letting his arms do a little bit of the floaty thing. I bet he cannot wait to get out of his seat.
Well, he's going to get a chance to here shortly. So he's officially on his way on his first space flight.
So
Incredible.
Victor, Mike, Shannon, and Soichi are now on course to arrive at the International Space Station just tomorrow, Monday, November 16th, around 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to stay live on air for continuous live coverage along their entire ride to station. Though our coverage here at Kennedy Space Center will conclude, we're going to turn it over to the teams in Hawthorne and Houston to take us through the next phases of the Crew-1 mission, all the way through hatch opening and a welcome ceremony for the crew. Now, for those of you watching online via YouTube, take a look at the description below the video. There you'll find the new link for our Crew-1 rendezvous phase, and we'll be continuing live coverage at that new location shortly. But if you're watching on NASA TV, like my parents, you won't notice a thing, and your coverage will continue.
That's right. And as you follow along, we also invite you to tune into a post-launch news conference at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, right here on NASA TV, where NASA and SpaceX will take questions live. And in addition to NASA TV, of course, you can always follow along on Twitter at @NASA and nasa.gov for continuous mission updates. We thank you all so much for watching. To all of our commentators, Nicole, special thanks to you for being here.
My pleasure, ladies. Let's do it again.
Oh, please, yes. Well,